Oh, so we are going to continue reading Bridge to Terabithia. We are in chapter 6, The Coming of Prince Tarian. So let's go ahead and take a look here on what is going to happen, just so that we know what to pay attention to in this chapter. It's going to be Christmas soon. Jess doesn't know what kind of gift to get Leslie. Plus, he doesn't have much money, and he's got his sisters that he wants to buy things for, and all that. So it's important for him to get Leslie something special, even if he can't afford to buy her something special. So he's really thinking hard. One day, Jess sees a sign for free puppies, which is perfect. So he gets her a puppy as a gift. She loves the puppy. Jess's parents get him a really cool race car gift, but it doesn't work very well, and his dad is really upset. And Jess wants his father to be happy, so he acts really happy about the gift, but it's kind of lame. So that's what we can expect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and step on out here, and we're going to go ahead and begin over here. So please follow along with me. Again, you have the PDF that you can open up and read. And I'm going to do my best to not muddle it all up. So, the coming of Prince Tarian. Christmas was almost a month away, but at Jess's house, the girls were already obsessed with it. This year, Ellie and Brenda both had boyfriends at the consolidated high school, and the problem of what to give them and what to expect from them was cause of endless speculation and fights. Fights became, as usual, because as usual, their mother was complaining that there was hardly enough money to give the little girls something from Santa Claus, let alone a surplus to buy record albums or shirts for a pair of boys she'd never set eyes on. "What are you going to get your girlfriend, Jess?" Brenda screwed her face up in that ugly way she had. He tried to ignore her. He was reading one of Leslie's books, and the adventures of an assistant pig keeper were far more important to him than Brenda's sauce. "Don't you know, Brenda?" Ellie joined in. "Jess ain't got no girlfriend." "Well, you're right for once. Nobody with any sense would call that stick a girl." Brenda pushed her face right into his and grinned the word girl through big painted lips. Something huge and hot swelled right up inside of him. And if he hadn't jumped out of the chair and walked away, he would have smacked her. He tried to figure out later what had made him so angry. Partly, of course, it made him furious that anyone as dumb as Brenda would think she could make fun of Leslie. Lord, it hurt his guts to realize that it was Brenda who was his blood sister, and that really, from anyone else's point of view, he and Leslie were not related at all. Maybe, he thought, I was a foundling, like in the stories. Way back when the creek had water in it, I came floating down in a wicker basket, waterproofed with pitch. My dad found me and brought me here because he'd always wanted a son and just had stupid daughters. My real parents and brothers and sisters live far away, farther away than West Virginia or even Ohio. Somewhere I have a family who have rooms filled with nothing but books and who still grieve for their baby who was stolen. He shook himself back to the source of his anger. He was angry, too, because it would soon be Christmas, and he had nothing to give Leslie. It was not that she would expect something expensive. It was that he needed to give her something as much as he needed to eat when he was hungry. He thought about making her a book of his drawings. He even stole paper and crayons from school to do it with. But nothing he drew seemed good enough, and he would end up scrawling across the half-finished page and poking it into the stove to burn up. By the last week of school before the holiday, he was growing desperate. There was no one he could ask for help or advice. His dad had told him he would give him $1 for each member of the family. But even if he cheated on the family presents, there was no way he could get from that enough to buy Leslie anything worth giving her. Besides, Maybelle had her heart set on a Barbie doll, and he had already promised to pool his money with Ellie and Brenda for that. Then the price had gone up, and he found he'd have to go over into everyone else's dollar to make up the full amount for Maybelle. Somehow, this year, Maybelle needed something special. She was always moping around. He and Leslie couldn't include her in their activities, but that was hard to explain to someone like Maybelle. Why didn't she play with Joyce Ann? He couldn't be expected to entertain her all the time. Still, she ought to have the Barbie. So there was no money, and he seemed paralyzed in his efforts to make anything for Leslie. She wouldn't be like Brenda or Ellie. She wouldn't laugh at him, no matter what he gave her. But for his own sake, he had to give her something that he could be proud of. If he had the money, he'd buy her a TV. One of those tiny Japanese ones that she could keep in her own room without bothering Judy and Bill. It didn't seem fair with all their money that they'd gotten rid of the TV. It wasn't as if Leslie would watch the way Brenda did, with her mouth open, her eyes bulging like a goldfish. Hour after hour. But every once in a while, a person liked to watch. At least, if she had one, it would be one less thing for the kids at school to sneer about. But of course, there was no way he could buy her a TV. It was pretty stupid of him even to think about it. Lord, he was stupid! He gazed miserably out of the window of the school bus. It was a wonder someone like Leslie would even give him the time of day. It was because there was no one else. She had found anyone else at that dumb school. He was so stupid, he'd almost gone straight past the sign without catching on, but something in the corner of his head clicked, and he jumped up, pushing past Leslie and Maybelle. See you later, he mumbled, and shoved his way up the aisle through pair after pair of sprawling legs. Let me off here, Miss Prentice, will you? This ain't your stop. Gotta do an errand for my mother, he lied. Long as you don't get me in trouble. She eased the brakes. No, Mum, thanks. He swung off the bus before it had really stopped and ran back toward the sign. Puppies, it said. Free. Jess told Leslie to meet him at the castle stronghold on Christmas Eve afternoon. The rest of his family had gone to the Millsburg Plaza for last-minute shopping, but he stayed behind. The dog was a little brown and black thing with great brown eyes. Jess stole a ribbon from Brenda's drawer and hurried across the field and down the hill with the puppy squirming in his arms. Before he got to the creek bed, it had licked his face raw and sent a stream down his jacket front, but he couldn't be mad. He tucked it tightly under his arm and swung across the creek as gently as he could. He could have walked through the gully. It would have been easier, but he couldn't escape the feeling that one must enter Terabithia only by the prescribed entrance. He couldn't let the puppy break the rules. It might mean bad luck for both of them. At the stronghold, he tied the ribbon around the puppy's neck, laughing as it backed out of the loop and chewed at the ends of the ribbon. It was a clever, lively little thing, a present Jess could be proud of. There was no mistaking the delight in Leslie's eyes. She dropped to her knees on the cold ground, picked up the puppy, and held it close to her face. Watch it, Jess cautioned. It sprays worse than a water pistol. Leslie moved it out a little way. Is it male or female? Once, in a rare while, there was something he could teach Leslie. Boy, he said happily. Then we'll name him Prince Terrian and make him the guardian of Terabithia. She put the puppy down and got to her feet. Where are you going? To the grove of pines, she answered. This is a time of greatest joy. Later that afternoon, Leslie gave Jess his present. It was a box of watercolors with 24 tubes of color and 3 brushes and a pad of heavy art paper. Lord, Thank you. He tried to think of a better way to say it, but he couldn't. Thank you, he repeated. It's not a great present like yours, she said humbly, but I hope you like it. He wanted to tell her how proud and good she had made him feel, that the rest of Christmas didn't matter because today had been so good. But the words he needed weren't there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he said. And then he got up on his knees and began to bark at Prince Terrian. The puppy raced around him in circles, yelping with delight. Leslie began to laugh. It egged Jess on. Everything the dog did, he imitated, flopping down at the last with his tongue lolling out. Leslie was laughing so hard she had trouble getting the words out. You're crazy! How will we teach him to be a noble guardian? You're turning him into a clown! Wailed Prince Terrian, rolling his eyes skyward. Jess and Leslie both collapsed. They were in pain from the laughter. Maybe, said Leslie at last, we better make him court jester. What about his name? Oh, we'll let him keep his name. Even a prince. This in her most Terabithian voice. Even a prince may be a fool. That night, the glow of the afternoon stayed with him. Even his sisters' squabbling about when presents were to be opened did not touch him. He helped Maybelle wrap her wretched little gifts and even sang Santa Claus is Coming to Town with her and Joyce Ann. Then Joyce Ann cried because they had no fireplace and Santa wouldn't be able to find the way. And suddenly he felt sorry for her going to Millsburg Plaza and seeing all those things and hoping that some guy in a red suit would give her all her dreams. Maybelle, at 6, was already too wise. She was just hoping for that stupid Barbie. He was glad he had splurged on it. Joyce Ann wouldn't care that he only had a hair clip for her. She would blame Santa, not him, for being cheap. He put his arm awkwardly around Joyce Ann. Come on, Joyce Ann, don't cry. Old Santa knows the way. He don't need a chimney, does he, Maybelle? Maybelle was watching him with her big, solemn eyes. Jess gave her a knowing wink over Joyce Ann's head. It melted her. Nah, Joyce Ann, he knows the way. He knows everything. She scrunched up her right cheek in a vain effort to return his wink. She was a good kid. He really liked old Maybelle. The next morning, he helped her dress and undress her Barbie at least 30 times. Slithering the skinny dress over the doll's head and arms and snapping the tiny fasteners was more than her chubby 6-year-old fingers could manage. He had received a racing car set, which he tried to run to please his father. It wasn't one of those big sets that they advertised on TV, but it was electric, and he knew his dad had put more money into it than he should have. But the silly cars kept falling off at the curves until his father was cursing at them with impatience. Jess wanted it to be okay. He wanted so much for his dad to be proud of his present, the way he, Jess, had been proud of the puppy. It's really great. Really. I just ain't got the hang of it yet. His face was red, and he kept shoving his hair back out of his eyes as he leaned over the plastic figure-8 track. Cheap junk. His father kicked at the floor dangerously near the track. Don't get nothing for your money these days. Joyce Ann was lying on her bed, screaming because she had yanked the string out of her talking doll and it was no longer talking. Brenda had her lips stuck out because Ellie had gotten a pair of pantyhose in her Christmas stocking and she had only bobby socks. Ellie wasn't helping matters, prancing around in her new hose, making a big show of helping Mama with the ham and sweet potatoes for dinner. Lord, sometimes Sometimes Ellie was as snotty as Wanda K. Moore. Jesse Oliver Aarons Jr., if you can stop playing with those fool cars long enough to milk the cow, I'd be most appreciative. Miss Bessie don't take no holiday, even if you do. Jess jumped up, pleased for an excuse to leave the track, which he couldn't make work to his dad's satisfaction. His mother seemed not to notice the promptness of his response, but went on in a complaining voice. I don't know what I'd do without Ellie. She's the only one of you kids ever cares whether I live or die. Ellie smiled in a plastic angel, first at Jessie and then at Brenda, who glared back. Leslie must have been watching for him, because as soon as he started across the yard, he could see her running out of the old Perkins place, the puppy half tripping her as it chased circles around her. They met at Miss Bessie's shed. I thought you were never coming out this morning. Yeah, well, Christmas, you know. Prince Terrian began to snap at Miss Bessie's hooves. She stamped in annoyance. Leslie picked him up so Jess could milk. The puppy squirmed and licked, making it almost impossible for her to talk. She giggled happily. Dumb dog, she said proudly. Yeah. Felt like Christmas again. All right, let's talk about it. What did Jess give to Leslie for Christmas? He gave her a puppy. She named the dog Prince Terrian. Isn't that sweet? He gave her a puppy. She named the dog Prince Terrian. I think Terrian because dogs are terriers. So I'm not quite sure, but that would be my guess. Or maybe Terrian, Terabithia. But I think it's more for Terrian, terrier, the dog. But I don't know. All right, let's see here. What did Leslie give to Jess for Christmas? That's right. She gave him an amazing paint set with paints and art paper, and he loved it. What did Jess's father give him for Christmas? You're right. His father gave him an electric car race set, but it didn't work very well. And Jess's father was upset about it, and Jess tried to be happy. I like it, Dad. The dad knew it wasn't very good. Just, whatever. He tried to be happy, but it wasn't something to be happy about. All right, so at the beginning, we're talking about surplus, okay? There was no surplus to buy records or shirts for a pair of boys she never set eyes on. Here's another example that the family is kind of poor. The parents are concerned about money, and Jess's sisters are like, Mama, can we have money to buy our boyfriends gifts? And Mom's like, what? Never even met those boys. We don't have enough money for us, let alone some other boys we don't even know. No money for them. So surplus means extra. There's no extra money. All right. Now, here we have this great comparison, what we call a simile. It was something that he needed to give her as much as. When we use the word as, it's a comparison. So here's what he's saying. He's saying he needed to give her a gift. He needed to give her a gift so badly, it's the same feeling as he has to eat. If you don't eat, you die. If he doesn't give her a good gift, he dies. That's how important this was. And we know because of the comparison words as. It's equal to, it's the same thing. He just had to eat every day. He just had to give her a special gift. Make sense? Good. All right, puppies. He sees the sign for puppies, and I just couldn't resist. Look at all these puppy gifs. They're just so cute. Oh my goodness. All right, enough with the puppies. Yes, he gave Jess a puppy named Prince Terrian. Pretty adorable little puppy. Okay. It says, in her most Terabithian voice. And so we have this idea of royalty. And we saw the word regally before, where she actually imagines she's a queen and so speaks as if she's a queen. All right, Terabithian voice. It's just silly. It's, pretend, whatever. So, all right. Here is something similar to what Jess's dad might have gotten him. I tell you what, I definitely had one of these when I was a kid. Awesome. When they work right. And if they don't work right, they are disappointing. But here's what we're talking about. We're talking about the relationship with Jess and his father and Jess and his family. Money is tight. We just saw there is not a surplus. There's not enough money. And yet here, he says he knew his dad spent more money than he should have. So maybe dad is like, you know what? I've only got $20 to spend on my son for Christmas, but I know he would love this gift. So I'm going to spend $30. Don't have a lot of money, but I'm going to spend more because it's special. So there's all kinds of things here. The dad, who hasn't been very close with Jess, is clearly thinking, what will my son love? What can I do to make my son happy? Which makes me so happy. Because here's this father doing something really kind and loving that we haven't seen throughout this book. Unfortunately, the $30 track, kind of terrible. The $50 track might have really worked well, but the dad is disappointed, like, ugh, I spent more money than I should have, and it's still not very good. And the father is upset. And Jess is trying, Dad, it's okay, I love it. But they all know that's not very good. So we get that relationship with Jess and his father, and I think it's such an important passage that shows us Dad loves Jess. He's just not very good at showing it. All right. Jess spent more money on Maybelle than he should have, but he really does love his little sister. So what did Jess help to buy for his little sister? That's right. He bought her the Barbie just like she wanted. Him and his sisters brought their money together, bought her the Barbie to make her happy. And he's like, you know what? I bought her the gift. I couldn't buy Leslie the gift, but Maybelle is pretty special. She deserves a good gift. I'm happy I did it. All right, so real quick, let's summarize. Jess sees a sign for free puppies, which is perfect because he doesn't have any money, and he gets the dog for Leslie. They name him Prince Terrian. Jess's dad was really generous and bought him an expensive, cool toy, but unfortunately it didn't work very well, and Jess and Leslie are very happy about being friends. And it says at the very end of the chapter, it says how it made him feel once again like Christmas. What did it say? It says, it felt like Christmas again. So just being with her was gift enough. All right, that's all for now. Catch you later.